Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Critical Podcast. I'm your host, Jimmy Good, and joining me once again is my go-to podcast compadre and co-host, Mr. Joe Lever. Joe, how are you faring this week, my friend?
Faring quite well, Jimmy. Yourself?
I'm doing just fine. Thank you so much. Now, for those of you who are joining us, maybe for the first time, maybe for the 262nd time, and yes, that is the right number, 262 episodes. Oh my gosh. Anyway, we're going to jump right in today because there's a lot to talk about this very specific subject, and we are playing with time because Joe's computer will die, so that makes it even more exciting for you at home. Will we wrap this up a normal way? Will it cut dramatically? Who knows? I'm excited to find out. But Joe and I, we're going to talk about something that I honestly didn't think, Joe, we would ever talk about like fully again. That's the Justice League, because we finally watched Zack Snyder's True Vision, the Snyder Cut of the Justice League, a film that came out a few years ago and is now on HBO Max. Now, if you haven't seen it, this is going to be full spoilers. The spoiler switch has been flipped. It's on the whole time. You've had a few years to watch that, and I would imagine if anybody is really dying to see this version of it, they probably already have, but maybe you're listening to this and you're like, oh, I saw the regular Justice League. What are the differences? And we're going to get into that today. So, yeah, man, there's a lot to talk about. I wrote down some talking points. I said to Joe, and I'm like, even this won't be fully exhaustive. But I just want to let's go technical for a second here, Joe. First things first, we're talking about the format. When we started watching this, it was like, oh, yeah, it has big black bars on the sides. Now, apparently, Zack Snyder had kind of shot and recorded this for IMAX and larger picture formats, but when you kind of condense it down and the way that he had shot it meant that this was the way that they were actually going to present it on streaming services. So those big black bars, they're there. I got used to them. Joe, I don't know how you felt about them moving forward. Like maybe in the beginning it was a little more jarring, but did you get used to them pretty quickly?
Maybe that initial introduction, it's like, weird. Yeah, it takes a bit of getting used to for the first 2 seconds, then you're over it.
Yeah, you try to. I think it's worse when the panning shots, and you can tell that there's things, and you're like, I want to see that. I want to like they cut through something.
Sure, it might have been a little more tasteful Yeah.
But another thing, too, is this thing is over 4 hours long. I think that's including the credits. And it's broken up into 6 different parts. Now, let's just say this, Joe. This would not have released in theaters the way it released on streaming. It just wouldn't. Even my beloved Lord of the Rings, which those films are usually pretty long, too. They're never this long. The extended cuts do get longer. But they would not release it and then also have, these kind of chapters almost that kind of went throughout, because I remember we were watching and we weren't even halfway through and I was like, oh my gosh, these chapter headings would pop up and I was like, oh yeah, this is quite a thing. It's like we're watching half a season of a streaming television show or something. But for you, did you like how they broke it up? Did it really matter in your mind while you were watching it?
No, the headings of part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5, part 6 didn't mean anything to me other than, really no meaning. Kind of artistic, unnecessary, but I didn't mind it. I don't remember any of them.
Yeah,
so that's how important they are. But at the same time, it's not like it's jarring or get that shit out of here. Next scene, what's going on? It's nothing like that. It was kind of a nice little meter, oh, wow, part 3, okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's fine. But 6 parts wouldn't have released in theaters the way it is. And I can see, there are blatantly some parts that they could have cut out fairly easily, regardless of what version you're watching.
Yeah.
And I think the only reason maybe I cared about the length of the film is because due to my lateness to the gathering, the online watch-a-thon, we were watching it up until almost 3 a.m. So Great. I've already apologized for that one. I won't do it again.
It's okay. You don't have to apologize. I'm just glad you were there. I wouldn't watch that without you, man. I would not have watched it without you. That wasn't going to happen, buddy.
There were probably comments and things that we missed off and on. I don't know what was with that party chat. It worked, but for some reason it wasn't working.
Yeah.
it was like hit and miss a lot. Like I could see times when you were talking, I just saw the indicator flash like you were talking, and I didn't hear a thing. Anyway, I'm sure there were a lot of good comments. We'll have to watch it again sometime.
Yeah, I'd be down
just
for
shits and giggles. Excuse my French. But here's the thing. Although there could have been some fat trimmed, I didn't mind whatsoever. I thought the length of the film, if you were to show something like that in theaters, awesome. Have an intermission at hour 2.
Yeah.
Everybody go refill drinks. You get 10 minutes refilled. Okay, that won't work. Everybody be in line for an hour. You get 20 minutes. Bathroom break, refresh drinks, snacks, come back. We start again. Could be cool. Granted, for something like that, you're reserving seats for so long. Seats are getting warm. You're not changing over seats as fast, so you need to charge more for a ticket. But it was a cool film. I think that and IMAX, and that length and everything, I might have been fine with. I'm not totally against a long film as long as it's worthwhile. So I think based on all that long, drawn out summary from my point of view, I think most can determine what I thought of the film. But.
Yep, he hated it. Anyway, no, we'll get to that because we'll get more specific about it. But Joe made a really good point. I think you're talking about kind of it being more artistic. This feels way more like an artsy flair to it compared to what we got in 2017. And for those out there who have seen Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice, this does feel a lot more like Zack Snyder's stuff because it's all him, but it felt like the ultimate edition of that, where there were things in Batman vs. Superman I remember seeing the first time, and I kept thinking, like, what are they talking about? Like, what's going on here? Scenes had been cut. But when you watch the Ultimate Edition, it feels more fleshed out. Here, it's the exact same thing. There are very few things, at least upon the first initial viewing for me, that felt like a stone that was left unturned. Like everything was checked out. Like it was like, oh, they're going to talk about this, or they're going to throw in another line or two to discuss this, or why did they pick this place to do this? That was really nice. Joe, you even talked about, there was one moment with Steppenwolf, who we'll get to a little bit later on, that he says he kind of picks, I think it's like Chernobyl or wherever it is in Russia, and he's like, oh, this place has got radiation, and it's going to be helpful because it's going to prevent other people from coming and messing with us, and we're going to be kind of alone. And that was like that's a great piece of context.
That was part of it, as well as it provided energy to create the defenses.
Yes, exactly.
So they sucked the radiation out of it to create their defense stronghold, but at the same time, you're right. It kept people away because they still think it's grow a third limb or fifth limb, sixth, whatever,
third arm.
How many limbs do we have? Yeah,
something like that. A couple.
But you're right. Yeah. Those are the details that were missing in the first one that they really did a good job of. Because people like us that are invested and want to, oh, this would be great. Justice League. I hope they do it justice.
Yeah.
And those are the details that people like us or true fans look for. Maybe general audience members don't care as much, but if they're serious or, adult minded, I'll say, they're like, well, why would they do that? Doesn't make sense. Those kind of things are answered a little bit because he takes the time to flesh them out. Well said. Continue.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That's fine. But I do want to say this because there's a lot of people out there saying like, oh, Joss Whedon's version or cut of it is inferior. I think that this was crazy circumstances. And for people who don't recall, Zack Snyder had to step away from the project a few years ago because of a family tragedy, and Joss Whedon was called in. And I could see where Warner Brothers was going with this because at the time, Joss Whedon had proven with Avengers and Avengers Age of Ultron that he knew how to do a big superhero film. And they saw that success, and they know that they wanted to kind of course correct with DC's offerings, and they decided to have him come in, add his own jokes and things. A lot of that stuff, I would say 80 to 90% of the joke stuff is gone completely.
Yep.
Which for better or for worse, depending on how you look at it, right? But I see where they were going.
Are you a child or?
Well, it was very Marvel, right? A lot of those things like Flash talking about brunch, that's gone. Like they just chopped it off, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yep.
but I see where they were going with that, and where it's so weird. It's so tonally different. You know, Joss Whedon versus like Zack Snyder, very different directors and styles of movies. That's why that first Justice League, I think, it's maybe more palatable, or was kind of the direction they wanted to go in or thought they should go in. With this is like the pure Zack Snyder, like, this is Man of Steel, this is Watchmen, like, which I watched both of those recently, and I'm like, oh yeah, for sure, this is his vision, truly. But the 4-hour thing, I just, even looking at this, Joe, and getting all that extra stuff, there were things in there that, like, for instance, it's like I don't know if it's a minute and a half or 2 minutes, there are these ladies who are singing when Aquaman leaves in the very beginning from this kind of like little,
they're like Norwegian or something,
fish town or something, and they sing, and it goes on for a long time. There's a lot of things in this movie that just like kind of stretch out, and you're like, what?
And it's of like no significance. I think that's the weirdest part. You're just like, why are they singing? What that, like, he like just like derobes and goes into the water. It's like, okay, and are they singing like a prayer hymn, like they worship him?
Sure. And if that's the case, I would love some subtitles or something that just said like, the man of the sea has come to save us and he goes away again, or something like that.
Exactly.
And I'd be like, oh, okay. So there's a lot of that in this movie. Where
the point kind of missed. It was kind of, not many people are like, oh yeah, clearly they're paying homage to Aquaman for bringing food during the harsh winter months when no ships can get into the harbor. Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Or like so that was kind of maybe on like the stuff that I was like, that's additional, you don't need. And then there was stuff like Wonder Woman's introduction that I think got fleshed out a little bit more. You still had kind of like these terrorists who were just like, guys, like, I'm going to blow a bunch of people up and that's going to send a message, which I was like, that's fine. But between that and the rest of the action sequences, it was amped up. There's a lot more fighting and a lot more brutality. This is rated R, so there's a lot more blood. Like I was noticing when, especially early with Wonder Woman, she's throwing these guys into walls, and you see blood splatter and stuff, and you're like, oh, like Wonder Woman's murdering these guys, or she's horribly crippling them. Which she's gotta save these people. But I just kind of appreciated it because I was like, okay, they're really like he's showing like if these people were real, what they probably would really do if they threw you into a marble pillar. You know what I mean? Like, it wouldn't just be like like, I'm fine. Like, they just go into prison. It's like, no, he's dead. Like, he's gone.
Yeah. I totally appreciate that tone of realism, right? I get that you can't make these, blockbuster monstrous budget films rated R because the audience range isn't as wide. It's a money thing. I get it, but my mentality when I'm going to the theater these days is a little different than it was probably 15, 20 years ago. I appreciate that realism and that that's how it would really happen, and I think it makes it more. It just makes it more, I hate to say relatable because, I see blood and guts every day when I'm doing it. I know, but you know what I mean? I think it's more connective and believable, and you're actually invested, I think, a little bit more because it seems so much more serious. So I kind of appreciate that. But I also understand, the theatrical release, it's a money thing.
There's also a little bit of swearing here, once from Cyborg, once from Batman. And I'll be honest, for me, weirdly, I am more, and maybe I'm just a crazy fool and I don't understand Batman, I am more okay with Batman gunning people down than him swearing. For some odd reason, whenever he says something like that, like in a really big way, especially at the end, which we'll get to, I just don't buy it. I'm just like, but I get it. It was like an extenuating circumstance. This is like a weird future thing that we're talking about. But it just, when he says it, I'm like, what? Batman? And Batman's just like, it's like, oh, Batman. Like, he's a different Batman, I guess, than what I'm used to. But
given that setting and that circumstance, I think that's exactly the point. He's a different Batman.
I know. It bothers me, man. I don't know what it is. And like I said, there's been a lot of people out there who are much angrier about the fact that he is still very much a kill or trigger happy kind of guy. He is ready to gun everybody down. And obviously this one's more about parademons, whereas Batman vs Superman was like actual people. And I think he was just kind of done in that movie. But as I was kind of reviewing this today, Batman vs Superman has him like super dark, gritty, ominous as you were, Joe. 20 years on in his career, this one kind of brings him back to being hopeful a little bit. And there's a little bit more kind of he's slightly lighter in this one, which is kind of nice to see. But weirdly, because there's so much extra stuff, it dilutes the Batman. Like, I felt like in Justice League, it's so much about him and Diana's relationship, which a lot of that's been just wiped out. They have one moment where it's an extra scene where they both kind of grab for a keyboard and a mouse, I should say, a mouse at the same time, and they bump hands, and that's kind of the most their character development. There's not a lot of that in there. It's like,
is it just me, or when they're in that shop, don't they have like a full-on conversation? And this time around, it's a little more short and snappy, and that's like their most intimate moments per se.
He also, there's a moment later on where the whole team is talking about resurrecting somebody, but in the original version, I think it's more so about basically Bruce taunting Diana about Steve, and she ends up kind of like pushing him against the thing, and there's more of that, which I do kind of like that too, but obviously kind of a shift away from that stuff as far as the extras are concerned.
It was kind of like pushing her to stop being on the wayside, give up the past, and like, inspire people. And I think that was him pushing her to go to Cyborg and get him on the team or something of that nature.
I think he was already maybe on the team at that point. I was trying to remember. He's frustrated about something, and they're basically just kind of throwing insults at each other. All I know is that, I don't know, Diana forgot about the 80s, man. She doesn't want to talk about the 80s. She's like, I'm not talking about the 80s, Yeah,
there's a problem there, isn't there?
Maybe, but it's not like, I get it. When Zack Snyder was making these things and when they were writing all this stuff, they weren't thinking that there was going to be a movie that was kind of interjected in the middle. So it's kind of hard.
They interjected it though, but they also had, Justice League did come out back in 2017.
They had 18? Ideas probably, yeah. It's like, talk to the team.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, sure, Patty, Wonder Woman can fly in 1984 before Justice League, where she did not fly.
She doesn't like to talk about it. She doesn't like to fly a lot. Maybe she does. Maybe she's just jumping really high and falling with style.
All I can say is, where the hell is the Kevin Feige of the DC side? If we had that, this would be okay. We would see these things coming. We would say, no, you can't do that until we come out with this one. Freaking develop a plan, you stupid shoot from the hip freaking people.
I know people in the past, I know I've said it too, for a while I thought it was Jeff Johns who was kind of like that, but maybe not as much. I don't know if they have someone who is kind of steering any sort of ship or if they're kind of making a bunch of different things. But hopefully after this, which very much felt like a continuation, and I don't think it's going to happen, but after this I was just like, oh man, like, I'd like to see where it's going. And also, we live in a post-Endgame world. I think in 2017... there was kind of the want for more of this, like, hey, it's lighter colors and funnier stuff. But now that, Endgame proved to be such a big success and we're okay, we've had so much Marvel stuff. And trust me, I love Marvel, like, clearly, but I could see where there's a world where both can exist. And I think that's where a lot of people come at, this film now, this version of it. It's kind of like, oh, yeah, I like this. But back in 2017, maybe, like, this was going to be too dark, and obviously way too long. But even if he had been able to complete it at the time, I wonder how well it would have been received, versus what we got with Justice League, which a lot of people were angry about. Which, another thing we should talk about too, I believe they fixed Henry Cavill's lip. I might be wrong still, or they did more to it.
I don't even remember it from the first one. I guess I wasn't like staring at it closely enough or something.
If we go back, and I don't know if like we'd ever watch the regular or the old version, theatrical version of Justice League anymore. There's something about the way he speaks that you can tell that it's almost like they had tape on his upper lip or something, and he's kind of like, hi, yeah. But now it looks great, and he sounds fine, and we're kind of jumping around a little bit here, but we do need to talk about this. It was a moment, this was like the moment I waited to watch with you, because I thought it was going to happen, and it totally did. We get Superman back, which, it's always great to see him. And he's walking down in his Fortress of Solitude, more or less. Actually, no, it's the big ship that had crashed, right? And he's walking through, and he kind of walks past the blue and red Superman suit, and he's kind of looking at something, and you're like, oh, like what's like, it's like, oh, it's time. And you finally see him come out in his like Death of Superman full black suit, silver S for hope, I should say, like his emblem. And boy, oh boy, I was like, wear it forever, dude. I'm like, it looks so good. I'm like, yes, we finally got black suit Superman. Like, how great was that? Like, it was so cool. Like, for you as a big Superman fan, was that like something you were like, oh, finally?
Yeah, that was a happy moment for sure. And after that, when he actually goes and his introduction during the big fight against Steppenwolf at the Stronghold,
Bold.
Instead of coming in and saying, "This guy's still giving you trouble," which was like a pukey moment in the first one. Instead, it was a lot more like, it was just intense and badass. It wasn't hokey bullshit. And we didn't have some weird Russian family or whatever outside of the radioactive zone that they had to wheel away. Superman carrying a freaking apartment building away. I don't know whoever thought that was a good idea, but I'd like to see him hung up on a telephone pole and get rocks thrown at him.
Oh, okay. He has to save people. Yeah. People want that in their superhero movies. I think in the original... Sure. He shows up, leaves because he hears that people are in danger, and then shows back up and says, is this guy still giving you trouble? In this one, the first thing he does is because he's trying to protect Cyborg, because Cyborg's trying to get rid of the 3 mother boxes during the Unity. He takes the shot from Steppenwolf's axe on his shoulder.
And
he stares at me and says, not impressed. I'm like, my gosh. Like, he doesn't know how powerful that axe is. He's just like, it's not gonna hurt me. It's that's pretty good. So yeah, Superman does stick around and kind of kicks into that fight. And all the fight scenes I thought were amped up. A lot of it was from a lot of it was from the theatrical version. They just added some things, like Cyborg got a little more play with his sonic cannons.
True.
There was a little bit more to the Superman versus the Justice League fight, which I appreciated. You get Flash running into Aquaman later on.
Yeah, after they resurrect him there, and he's by his old statue. Yep,
yeah, which is great. I do miss a little bit, and I know a lot of people say this is stupid, but I do miss where he does pick up Batman by his face and he says, do you bleed? There's something about that. I know it sounds dumb, but I like to think of like a resurrected angry Superman who's like, he's like, do you bleed? And it's Affleck's Batman going like, yeah, dude, I do. Oh, for sure bleed. But and then later on with that kind of weird joke where Batman's like, yep, something's bleeding. That one doesn't play as well. Also, you could tell that suit it looked a little weird being so like bright and light, and that like the texture of it. This looked a little bit better. It was much more desaturated than the original, or that Justice League that we ended up getting in theaters. But Batman, Batman got a chance to use like some of his gadgets to stop like Clark's little laser beams, his eye beams and stuff. I was like, that was
impressive. That was really cool.
As I told you, Joe, I don't know if you heard me while we're watching this, but I was like, if there's any moment to do this, I was like, maybe there's a chance he pulls out either a kryptonite dagger or brass knuckles or kryptonite knuckles. I was like, if any movie's gonna do it, it's probably gonna be this one, because I could see him like getting grabbed by him and just pulling out and just cracking him in the face. I was gonna be like, oh, because like the scenes kept going longer than I thought, and I was like, oh, maybe he's gonna do it, and then he didn't, because he was like, I'm about to die here, and thankfully Lois showed up, and that didn't happen. So I was like, okay. That works.
Yeah, and Batman in the original theatrical, doesn't he radio Alfred bring out the big guns or something, and they deliver? It wasn't his mother; it was Lois, right?
Yeah, which that I think works too. I think it's kind of weird, and I feel kind of thankful and grateful that we got both versions. Weirdly, because I like to see multiple stuff like that. Because it's like, yeah, that would make sense. That's a Bruce Wayne big brain move. Like, he's like, if this goes poorly, like, we're going to bring Lois in because she's like the only one. It's like the Hulk, and Betty Ross. It's like you bring her in and then it's like, oh, okay, the Hulk has been stopped. But before that, he's like, it's unstoppable. But I get that. And this one, it was just kind of like she was around and she saw it happen and she's like, I got to go check this out. And it's like, okay, fair enough.
We've gone through, I'm trying to think back here.
I skipped around, so if you're looking at the talking points, we've jumped around a little bit, so don't worry about it.
There's something I wanted to hit, and now I forget what it was.
One thing I will say this about the resurrection sequence, I really like the fact that they played it up a little more of the intensity, because in the original version, Aquaman says, this is a bad idea, and Bruce is like, do it. and then they do it. But this one, it was like there was a full countdown on top of it, even more so. And then there was like Flash went back in time just a little bit there because the mother box hit the water or hit the amniotic fluid, and they came back up. And I was like, so he didn't manage it perfectly. That's what I kind of liked about this one. There's a few screw ups in this movie, but they come back from it, and you're like, that's pretty good. And you're like,
oh, and I also like how the ship is like warning him not to do this. It's irreversible. You should not do it. And it's. I really like. I mean, I don't love, but I appreciate and enjoy what they did with like Kryptonian technology.
Yeah. There's that line I was joking with you about where it's like the onboard AI said like the future is now rooted in the present, and I was like, what?
I didn't quite understand that. I think I asked you. I don't really get it.
I think it was saying like there were multiple like outcomes for this, and it was like if you do this, like this is how it's going to be moving forward. And I was like, how does the ship AI know this? So it was like that ship AI is really freaking good. Thank goodness Jor-El has been purged, otherwise he would have shown back up as AI to be like, he's like, resurrect my son, it'll be great. It's like, yay. But yeah, there was a lot more Cyborg. Now, speaking of Cyborg right there's a lot more Cyborg stuff in this. A lot more. We're talking like his full, like a Cyborg movie is in this movie. Like his origin story, like him when he was a football player, like him going to his mom's grave. And I made that joke because he buries a mother box over there. And I was like, he's going to try to resurrect her with the mother box. Or he does something over by her grave. You remember that part? There's a lot of Cyborg stuff in this, and I was like, oh, wow. Like,
they flesh him out and introduce him a bit more appropriately. I mean,
flesh him out, Joe. Good joke.
Yeah. I mean, it's the first time we meet him and everything, and they kind of make you understand him a bit more. I mean, he's always brooding and kind of gruff and never quite.
He's kind of apathetic.
In a happy place. Yeah. It helps that cause, and I don't know if I like him more. I mean, I do, just because of that. You get more time with him to understand him and maybe appreciate him a bit more. They did a good job with the character and everything. The original one, because it's only parts of what you see in this one.
Yeah.
And when it's condensed down like that and you're missing a lot of the more meaningful things, it makes you really not appreciate the performance in the theatrical cut.
Yeah.
Whereas here, I actually appreciated it more because there was lead up to it and more understanding and apathy, like you said, or empathy.
He's kind of apathetic as he becomes. It feels like more robotic. Like he just starts to be like, he's like, what's the point? Like with all this stuff, and then he has that moment where it's like, well, you could make this really hard, single parent, this struggling mom who's a waitress, and he just gives her like $100,000 because he like goes into the net and he can like make that. And I was like, how he can just like make money? I guess like he could just do that, I'm like, oh.
Kind of limitless power in modern society, basically, and they have his dad narrating that and telling him. It's kind of interesting.
Which, again, I really think he could have gotten his own movie, or I'd have liked to have seen that before this one. And not that everything needs to be Marvel or the MCU, but I think that would have helped, along with his dad, which there's a lot more stuff about his dad working at Star Labs. They even introduce like his partner who becomes the Atom later on. That is kind of that guy who's there working with him in the lab. I don't know if you remember him. His name was I think it was like Ryan. He had like black spiky hair. He was like in the lab with him all the time, and he didn't have a ton. Yeah, he didn't have a ton of play in the movie, but he was going to eventually be the Atom, who you'd probably recognize from as Brandon Routh played him on like Legends of Tomorrow and the CW stuff. He's like, he can shrink down.
Oh, the robot suit and stuff, that's mech's tech suit?
Yeah, kind of Ant-Man-ish.
When you say Adam, I think of like Dwayne The Rock.
Not Black Adam, sorry. No, you're like, wait, how does that work?
Yeah, I'm thinking Black Adam. I'm like, man, that doesn't really match up well.
So all that stuff, I felt like could have been its own movie. And then also, we get like a bunch of preamble to Aquaman with some Willem Dafoe with long hair, which I was not expecting at all. I think his name popped up at the beginning, and I was like, what?
I said that. I'm like, Willem Dafoe's in here?
Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh.
Sure Amber Heard was there and played a bigger role than last time.
Which they do set up and show him getting his mother's trident and everything. And, like I said, it's a preamble to Aquaman. But at the same time, I kind of wish, like, that's like part of the reason this thing's 4 hours long. there's all that stuff in there that probably could have been better off in, a previous film if they could have done
Sure.
it.
But you know what else that moment, those moments were well suited to the film because that's the problem. That's the problem. Justice League was premature in almost every way. The only people who didn't need their own film leading up to this, obviously, are Superman and Batman because we had seen them in prior movies.
Yeah.
You didn't, and let's face it, do you really need the background or the introduction for those characters at this point? No. But we've had it, whereas Aquaman, they had to take the time in Snyder's cut to, here's how he got the armor, here's where he got the trident. He just wasn't there already. Everybody's like, wait, is this after the Aquaman movie or before? His armor was a little bit more saturated in the theatrical version, and for a second you think it's the King whatever, the
King Atlan.
Atlan, yeah, you think it's all that stuff, and you're so confused. You're just like, So this movie does those things well to try and make up for the fact that they didn't get their own solo lead-ins.
Yeah.
And the only one that I feel like they don't really flesh out too much or lead him in very well is the Flash. But granted, I mean, the Flash, I feel like more than any of them besides Superman, Batman, is a character, especially when you have like the TV show and everything. I feel like he's fleshed out fairly well. People understand, he's struck by lightning super fast, all that bullshit. So, but I think it's pretty clear there was a lot of time spent on, here's how they get to here. Here's how they get to here. Welcome Cyborg to the film here,
Yeah.
So there's a bit of that. I didn't hate it. It was well done. If you're going to try and do that to get this big monster of a movie, if you want to really do Justice League this soon, prematurely, you have to do things like that to make it feel like it's appropriate.
Yeah. No, totally. That's well put.
Otherwise, you feel like you were a freaking live lobster dumped in a boiling pot,
Well, sure. And if you didn't watch Justice League or were unfamiliar with these characters beforehand and you just watched this, you would be like, what is going on? But they do, you bring up Barry, and Barry gets that scene, that action sequence that was cut from Justice League and now is in the Snyder cut, where he goes and saves Iris West from this kind of crazy explosion. He kind of turns really fast, his shoes disintegrate, and he runs outside to save her, grabs a CGI hot dog, which I was like, what is he doing? And then it's like, oh, he's trying to get a job at this pet store, and all the dogs love him because he's got a hot dog. At first, I was like, what is happening here? I was like, this is so much, right?
It was a soft intro of the character, right?
I don't think totally.
It wasn't as meaningful as like Cyborgs, where you actually get kind of the, here's where he was, here's where he is now, here's what happened between that point, somewhat, the quick Cliff Notes breakdown, so to speak. So, I don't know. Did you feel like you needed a little bit more for Flash, or maybe they could have done something a little better?
I liked that.
Maybe they could have.
They could have. It would have been nice to have that just in the theatrical version. Like, if you weren't familiar with Flash, you'd be like, okay, this guy's kind of quirky. He's trying to get a bunch of jobs, and he's super duper fast. And that's all you would need to know. Like, then when he gets introduced to Bruce Wayne, you'd be like, oh, I kind of know a little bit about this guy already. Like, I get what he's about. And I could see where he would want to join up with their team without really, asking questions. I'm surprised he didn't ask to get paid. He's like, you're rich? That's your power? Yeah, can I get some money? Like, I'd love to. My dad's in prison. And he didn't kill my mom.
Instead of the whole trying to get a job pet store bullshit scene, maybe they should have gone back and been like, lightning strike, dark matter, powers.
Sure.
After coma for a while, mother dies, father framed. Here I am. So maybe that, I feel like that might have been the more, you didn't give him the solo film, that, the introduction way before Justice League happened. So you better do the quick Cliff Note. Here he is. Here's how. Here's why. Here's today. I feel like I would have approached the Flash a little differently because I think he's the only one that didn't get the right introduction. I feel like Aquaman. We know we have Aquaman the movie, great film, did really well. I feel like maybe we get enough from him as to here's why he is with the Justice League, here's how he got his trident, all that stuff. They give a little bit of that stuff in there, which is great. But we also get the Aquaman movie, which happens post Justice League, which is nice because we know, okay, we've gotten the background, right? Everybody who's seen that movie likely went and watched this or Justice League. So I feel like there it's okay
Yeah,
because of that. Had we not gotten Aquaman yet, they better have done something a little bit more. But so yeah, of all of them, my point being, Flash needed something a bit more meaningful.
yeah.
Ezra Miller or whatever, he's fine. I think there's something a little. He doesn't. He talks about ADHD or ADD or whatever. He says that at some point. I'm fairly certain.
Does he? He could have.
Yeah, I swear. Yeah, this is what you get when you combine this with a high metabolism or something like that. He says it at some point. I'm fairly certain. Because I'll be honest, and not to be insensitive to people with that issue, ADD or ADHD, but the way he acts the character or portrays that character, I think that's the vibe you get. He's very spazzy.
Yeah.
You know, he's a lot different than the character you get from, or the Barry Allen you get from like the TV series or on the CW.
Yeah.
Very different. So,
yeah.
Yeah, I feel like there are some tweaks that could be, which I don't mind that. You know, it's a different take on the character. I think it's totally appropriate, but I would have liked to have seen, they should have given him his time early on to establish him as a relatable, care about him character.
Sure.
Whereas the others, I feel like they did a fairly good job with this film to do that and establish that.
Yeah, and it's weird. The one thing they kind of took out, and they still have this scene, it's a little bit different, but is getting actually Superman's body, and maybe one of the most kind of relatable, or I should say like moments that might connect you to Flash is like him talking to Cyborg. And I don't think they have this in the regular one. This is the problem. I watched both of them in quick succession, so it's hard for me sometimes to tell which is which. But I think he talks about that they were both the accidents on the team. Everybody else on the team right now is like they're there on purpose, or they like, you know, they're super powerful because of a certain reason. But Flash and Cyborg were both like, yeah, we didn't mean to get these powers, but we did, and we're the newbies. So hi, how you doing? And I was always like, oh, that's pretty nice. However, I think he's way better in the finale where instead of saving people, he's trying to build up enough charge to power up Cyborg so he can kind of rip these three mother boxes apart, and ends up getting hurt because if you shot at the Flash while he was running in a circle, I don't know if it would matter where you shot at that circle. You'd probably hit him or never hit him. I don't understand how that works. But one Parademon is like very good about that. It was like, good job, Parademon. But he does do almost like a Flashpoint type moment where he kind of prevents the true failure of the Justice League, because like I talked about with the Mother Box before, but on a grander scale, the Justice League lost the first time. It didn't work out for him. And Barry's like, no, man, like I'm not going to let, Darkseid and everybody kind of pop up here and kill everybody because they're like the explosion happens or something like that because it takes them all out. Yeah. And Barry's like, no, that's not happening. So they do this really cool scene. And man, like this moment and plenty of other moments, but this one in particular, Joe, for me, I was like, oh man, the budget. This was not something they could have just like release a few extra scenes and call it the Snyder Cut. It was like, no, this is like when Barry's going like kind of back in time and like things are happening before him as he's moving forward and like all these effects are going off. I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, somebody was working, like a bunch of people were working on this and they're like, this scene is nuts. And I was like, oh, it's so cool. They spent time on this. I was like, yeah.
And stuff. It was nuts. I really like that. That was one of the things about the theatrical cut that I almost could care less when they get to Chernobyl or wherever that was in Russia, and they have that fight. First of all, the family trying to escape in their truck, like the oversaturation and the fact that like everything was red and seemed to be like covered in the weird reforming of the environments. This time it was the defensive hold where Steppenwolf and his goons were, and then it was the outdoors normal-ish. Yeah. They didn't like everything was red everywhere. It was like because that was like very jarring for me back then. They also there was a bit more stuffed into this thing in that end sequence when they're assaulting Steppenwolf's stronghold, and I really liked it. I'll admit I was getting a little goosebumpy when Superman came in. I was Oh, and Batman, I think, gets a lot.
Thank you.
The way he infiltrates the place and everything, they explain it. He tests the shield and all this and that. You pointed that out.
I was going to talk about it. Great. Thank you.
And then he also gets his, the sequence of him like spitting out the Batmobile and then just wrecking face. Like, it felt better for some reason. I don't think that wasn't even in the theatrical one, right? I apologize. I hadn't watched it.
I believe he does take out a few parademons, but this one is more of like
it's short-lived, right?
He's kind of taking out people on the turrets and stuff too. Like Batman really knows his place in these fights. He's not going to be like in the thick of it fighting Steppenwolf, or like with Doomsday, he was kind of like, I'll do a thing and run away. It was like that's what he does. Yeah. It's not like he's going to tank those. But yeah, he got to do more. But I'm so glad he brought up the shield thing, Joe. It's one of my pet peeves in movies when somebody charges a force field or a shield and they shoot missiles and they hope that it breaks it just enough that they can go through. Because in the regular version, he does it once and goes right through. In this one, he, like you said, he tests it and he's like, all right, I'm going to have to hit it really hard and then fly the Flying Fox. That's the official name of that giant whale of his ship.
Which they explain how they got it flying.
Yes,
Cyborg
in this one
actually like hacks into it and repairs some computer control things, and lo and behold, here it comes flying up. And love that because they didn't really explain that before.
Well, I guess it was in the last one. It's cooler because
Bruce
it makes
says it wrong.
Well, it's cooler because, Cyborg had, helped. And because, in this one, they say that all the best people at Wayne Tech were like, we don't know how to make it fly, which is crazy.
Yeah,
because, it's
great.
I was like, I don't know what, there's something about this one in particular that was so hard to make fly. Probably because of the design. It's shaped like a whale. I'm sorry. It bothers me so much. I'm like, I get it. You got to put the Batmobile in there. We were talking about this. I was like, a lot of his machines are very chunky. He's got the Nightcrawler, that you're not a huge fan of. But at the very end, they showed the Dark Knight Returns tank that he's got, the big treads, and it's got the big bat face on the front. I was like, oh my god, they were gonna do that thing. I was like,
the thing about that, I saw that at the end, and I was like, you realize to get that thing to move, the amount of power you would need.
He's got a lot. He's got a couple thrusters.
Be flying really fast.
Oh yeah, it's moving.
Oh man,
ready to kill people. But anyway, I just
through fuel like an alcoholic.
Yeah, well, you mentioned that fight at the end, which is really great because, I mentioned it before, Superman, the first thing he does, uses one of the moves I think you've said in the past you don't like, maybe you've come around on it, but the first thing he does is he breathes, he just does his little, and he breathes on Steppenwolf's axe, and then he shatters it right away, which was the defining, they defeated him in the theatrical version when they destroyed his axe together, because they kind of do the same thing, and Wonder Woman kind of does the chops it, and it's like, hey, we beat him, and then the parademons take him away. And this one, it was like, hey, we destroyed your axe, and now we're going to just beat you up for a bit. They mutilated this guy, almost quartered him. It was crazy. They were ripping him apart. I was like, oh.
Yeah, Superman slices his freaking horn off and stuff.
And then the kill where Aquaman stabs him in the back, and they throw him up, and Diana chops his head off, and the head goes through the boom tube back to Darkseid. I was like,
oh my god, that was.
It was like, don't come to Earth, baby. It's like, yeah. I was like, Butcher.
Those were the kind of things that I just, that I expect out of films like this. But
see, that's where I get where Batman doesn't kill, and I guess he's okay with killing aliens, but it would have been a big downer if Bruce was like, hey guys, I thought we said we weren't killing anybody. It would have been weird.
Somebody who's trying to kill everyone on Earth. Yeah, let's not kill them.
He's like, put them in prison, they'll learn. Which we talked about this in the past, but Steppenwolf, I'll say this, they really designed his armor. It's living armor. It's kind of got all these shards kind of poking off of it. And when he catches the arrows early on from the Amazons, it can kind of it'll kind of catch and rip them off and stuff. And his face looks a little bit more like his eyes. There's a little more animation behind it, or it seemed a little more cartoony, but in a good way. There's a little more emotion there.
Maybe more. Yeah. Compared to Marvel, maybe a little bit more Thanos-esque. There's actual personality there. The eyes actually you relate to it. It's not just some dead great white shark with the dead eyes, and it's just an animated thing there. it was legit. I think it was well done.
I thought his armor was maybe a little bit much. I don't know how you felt about it. I just thought it was like, I thought it was cool, but sometimes I was like, man, they spent a lot of money to make that thing look like living metal. I was like, oh my gosh.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, the way it does certain things, like yeah, like you gave the example of the arrows, like the Amazons, like just freaking litter his chest with arrows, and the way the armor is designed, it's like a bunch of scutes or scales of metal almost,
sure.
and so they hit all of the gaps and the arrow stuck in them, and then the scutes, or is that how you'd say it? Like dragon scale scutes, or like on the back of an alligator, the scutes.
You got couple
Either
of
way,
scutes.
they like scissor. They all like meld together, and like a scissor action when they close together, they just snap the arrows off. So presumably he's still got a bunch of arrowheads in his body, but at least the big sticks are not. But it was kind of cool. It was like an adaptable armor that would actually, like, he could like kind of Iron Man nanotech suit. It would just unveil when he wanted it to, kind of a thing, like when he's speaking with Darkseid, who I think we should save to the end, by the way. But yeah, this time around, I like Steppenwolf a lot more.
Yeah.
Each step of the way, him getting the mother boxes, I think, is much more appropriately fleshed out, and the things he does, I appreciate more. And when he's like interacting with other characters, the violence, the actual impact of him being there is felt. People getting chopped in half, thrown around, like you think, okay, he's somebody to be to tangle with. The whole time am I thinking, okay, Superman's going to show up and it's just going to be, whatever.
Yeah.
Not really. I mean, he's something to be reckoned with. He takes on all the Amazons. He, boots Wonder Woman around. I mean, I think, Wonder Woman and Aquaman together in the early part of that fight. I mean, at first it's like, oh yeah, they're getting him. But then all of a sudden he's just like, enough, and so he was something to be reckoned with. So I think that's well done, as establishing him as an actual like viable villain. Like he's not just some crony, although he seems to be. He is in the grand scheme. He holds his own and actually seems worth spending 4 hours on, to a certain degree.
Yeah. The
thing that makes it even better is that you have this overarching higher power above him. Mm-hmm. That really makes it more impactful, of like, wow, the villain, how do you want to say it? The
mastermind?
It's kind of like, you have these stepping stones of villains towards the big bad. It's kind of the same way that Marvel did it. You had a lot of other people involved, maybe related to the big bad, but never the big bad until the big deal. So like, presumably Justice League 3, you finally actually get Darkseid in the flesh on the planet. They're actually, so I think there's a good setup there. And I would like, this movie had multiple cliffhangers.
Yeah.
Multiple cliffhangers is one way to put it, I guess. Not only, it's kind of like every time they would tease Thanos at the end of a Avengers movie or something like that, it'd be like, oh, when are we going to get him, in the flesh and fighting and that sort of thing. So there's that kind of side of things. And the other characters that they show off alongside Darkseid side.
There you go. Side.
Yeah, side. So there's that side of things where it's like, kind of bated breath. Well, more Darkseid. Give me.
Yeah.
Who's done really well, by the way, and the fact that they actually like had that little bit of like, here he is, guys. One day you're gonna get him, and that was great and well done, well designed. The voice acting was good, but then now you have the other side of things where you get like the alternate. It wasn't an alternate. Was it an alternate timeline?
Apparently,
Flash created, so you get that whole end sequence.
That end sequence apparently, supposedly, was going to be the future, potentially. But I also don't know if that would have been like a branching future, because it seems like it should have been, especially with the people they say who died. And you're like, really? Are they going to kill off these major players? And I was like, I don't know.
I don't know either. It has to be actually the future, because at the end of the movie, I don't think we got this in the theatrical cut, but Bruce says to Clark, "Congratulations, by the way." They show off the pregnancy test in the drawer of Lois's
Oh, I missed
nightstand and
that.
stuff
Okay.
like that. So I'm fairly certain it was him congratulating him on, an expected little Superman, and I'm pretty sure Joker kills Lois. Superman wants to just kill the world because
Well,
something of that nature.
actually, okay, so that would be like Injustice, which I wish they would do. Apparently, though, this was I can't believe they brought this up. They brought it up like 3 or 4 times, and I didn't think they would. But there's like a few times. There's some check-ins. There's some quest check-ins with good old Steppenwolf. He'll bring back a mother box, and then Desaad will show up in this like weird tombstone that turns into like liquid metal, and he'll be like, "So how's the conquering of Earth going?" And Steppenwolf's like, "Well, we're these. I'm in the preparation phase. We got one box. We got some intel on a second one. We're gonna get back out there. We're gonna find it soon with me and my 6 or 7 claws here." And he's kind of working his way up to that. But then eventually we see Darkseid, like you talked about, kind of in that same liquid metal, and we see him in the flesh a few times too. But they start talking about the anti-life equation. And apparently that is what Darkseid's looking for. It's on Earth, and they talk about it a few times, which is like one of the nerdiest things ever. I love it. But apparently that's what potentially turns Superman to do what he does. Darkseid turns Superman on his side to take over and conquer Earth. And I was like, oh, that's kind of a fun idea. I wouldn't mind, if they had kept going with this, if they would have done a more typical Justice League, like they fight Darkseid, beat him, and then did an offshoot where that stuff happened, and they're like, hey, this is like Justice League alternative, like, oh my gosh, it's like Apocalypse, and they're trying to fight him.
That's where I feel like it would be better if it was like an alternate timeline kind of thing. Like if Flash hadn't done the turn back time, here's where we would have been.
Sure.
And they kind of do an offshoot of like the post-apocalyptic version, and then you have the mainstream here you turn back time version. Maybe something like that. I almost feel like it's a little unnecessary. The one thing I get caught up in is it's like, okay, you finally got the Justice League. You have a lot of characters in the DC universe to draw upon, and you're going to go to post-apocalyptic right away. That you don't really come back from. Like, you don't, like...
It's hard, yeah.
Yeah, the world's been basically turned to tatters. Superman's wreaking havoc. You got Darkseid on soil, pulling strings. You don't go back from that and like civilization is repaired, Justice League is here again. It's just at that point it's kind of over, and you're kind of writing / filming. You're creating your way into a corner that you can't really reverse. And it's like, how long do you want this universe to continue? Well, no, we're going for Apocalypse right away, and it's basically over here. The only other thing is, okay, things turn back. They defeat Darkseid. Superman's back to normal. And what then? 50, 60, 80 years in the future, the world's built back up again. Cities are back to normal. There's a Starbucks on every corner, and people do their 9 to 5.
Yeah.
That doesn't pan out in my mind. And if I'm Warner Bros., I'm like, wait, hold on. Where are you going?
Yeah.
Where are you going? We want this to last a little longer here, guys.
For sure.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I totally agree. And talking about that, because, if we can hop around as much as we want here, talking about that final or that kind of apocalypse sequence, it's kind of a strange ragtag group because we do get Batman, Flash, and Cyborg, but then we also get Mira because Aquaman apparently is dead at the time. Also, my boy Deathstroke is there, sporting a mohawk, which I don't know how to feel about, because I was like, Deathstroke? What the heck happened? But yeah, he's
I'm glad
changed.
they gave him the moments they did.
I'm glad.
And credit scene is still in there.
Yes, which they, by the way, so yeah, the one you're talking or Joe's referring to is at the end of Justice League. Yeah, it's Lex Luthor and Deathstroke sitting there talking about this. And in the theatrical version, Lex Luthor says, I think we need a league of our own. And it's kind of like saying, oh, just like was it the League of Doom or something like that? But in this one, I thought it made way more sense because they give the throwaway line. Lex kind of says, I guess it's kind of like a little nod to it. He's like an eye for an eye, kind of saying that Batman maybe took his eye in this version of Deathstroke. But he says, maybe this will help you hunt down Batman. His name is Bruce Wayne. I was like, okay. And that was supposed to lead into the actual Batman standalone film, which I like. It drives me nuts because I wanted that, and I just watched an interview with Joe Manganiello recently, and he talked about coming back to reshoot or to add that stuff, especially the apocalypse stuff. And he said, like, this is a really crazy process. He was like, the way he put it was so good. He's like,
that's why you had the mohawk. Because on social media, I saw he had an actual mohawk, and I was like, "Why? It was because he was doing the reshoots. He actually did the mohawk."
Yeah. So all that stuff, like Ben Affleck came back as Batman. I'm like, oh my gosh, he's still willing to do it, right? So I'm sorry, I just really hold hope for him. But basically, what he said for that is he's like, they were asking him, they're like, so like, this is like Justice League, this is a big deal, and he's like, yeah, it's not really my movie though. He's like, I'm in it in a few parts. He's like, they bought the building, and I'm the guy who came with the building. He's like, so it wasn't like me. He was like, I was prepping to, get into, doing Deathstroke for that Batman standalone film. It just never happened. But he came back for those reshoots, which again, it was kind of weird to see him. But there's like a story there where I want to know where it's like, okay, so obviously he went after Batman, or potentially. In the present, and then in the future, they were like, all right, set aside our differences. Well, as I smacked the mic around, set aside our differences, and then we're going to work together to fight Superman and to try to destroy Darkseid. And I was like, oh, that's a really cool concept. And I was like, this is such a weird group of people. And then if you want to add one more weird person to this whole thing, who would you add but the Joker? Jared Leto's Joker hanging out with Ben Affleck's Batman and really getting a proper exchange. I know we talked about this a little bit, and it was probably too late, and I felt bad because we didn't have much time, and I was cranky and tired because it was like 3 a.m. But Jared Leto's Joker there, long hair, he's part of the team. There's this kind of exchange where Batman talks about how Harley Quinn died in his arms and that he promised Harley that Joker would die a slow, horrible death. But they're working together. For some reason, maybe, I don't know why Joker always seems to be like a guy that they're like, we need him alive. It's like, do we? Like, like, what is it about the Joker where you're like, yes, he adds tactical advantage to my team?
There was something to do with his effects emotionally on Superman or something.
Oh, is that what it was?
There was a reason they were keeping him alive. Yeah, there's something to do with Superman's reaction to him.
Right.
Yeah. Otherwise, why else wouldn't he have killed him right there?
And it could be the lowest thing. Yeah. It could still be that too.
It's like, something about that. There was something about, well, Batman let her die. He says that outright. If you wouldn't have let her die or whatever, something like that. And the only thing, I mean, was any of that necessary? I don't really like the post-apocalyptic thing. There's something there's something about it that doesn't quite jive with me. Like, I don't like that direction so much. Exactly. I don't really like Mad Max that much. I'm kind of like,
I liked it, but I understand. I understand where you're coming from. It's hard to make it as compelling in a world where it's like dusty and sandy. You're like, cool. Like, for superheroes.
And plus in my mind, I immediately think, well, I lost everything that could have been the Justice League and Civilization and other threats, and here we are, the Justice League in tatters and separated, half of them dead. What's the point anymore?
Yeah. Like, who are we fighting for? Everybody's dead. Like,
exactly. Exactly. That's kind of what I think about that whole direction.
Yeah.
But the only problem that I really had with that end sequence was the distasteful, like, if you kill me, Bat, who else is going to give you a reach around? And I'm like, what? Like,
yeah,
I felt like that was very distasteful. Not that I can't take something that's a little rated R, but that's like something like a 19-year-old.
It paints a weird picture,
would say.
Right? Like, yeah, I totally, I agree with you. I thought it was weird. I've always felt like his dialogue, and I have to go back and watch Suicide Squad, but I always thought there was potential with him, because I know a lot of people really love his work, and so I thought, oh, he's going in a very different direction. Even coming down to the laugh, which I think is very divisive. I know you talked about you like it. I'm not really sold on it. Maybe if I heard it more, but like he goes.
I think it's got a more evil vibe to it. That's all.
Okay, fair enough.
Not that it's bad or good or better.
I just like my crazy maniacal, but maybe I just want Mark Hamill. Just put Mark Hamill in that, like, just an older Mark Hamill sitting on that car. People would have been like, that's great. No, but it's really interesting to see him kind of pick a direction and really commit to it, and to see him come back, because I think a lot of people were like, we're never going to see this Jared Leto Joker ever again. And then it was like, whoa, he's here, and he's like having a conversation with Batman, which I think a lot of people just they want to see that. There's something about Batman and Joker, regardless of the version, people love to see those two talk. This was just weird because you get Joker saying stuff like this, and then you get Batman swearing at him, and it just felt very odd. Like, and the apocalypse setting doesn't help it much either. If they were maybe because I'm used to them in like a prison cell, Joe, and if they talked like this in like a prison cell, I'd be like, this is a weird, like, what, you know?
And in the same breath, none of us understand like the context or the background as to why and when and what happened between then and now, and what's this conversation mean. Mm-hmm. I think that's part of the allure of it. Like, yeah, I keep guessing, you know, like I think there's a lot of that, but I mean, I'll go back to it again. The only thing that I didn't really enjoy about it was the distasteful, like, who else is going to give you a reach round? It's like, yeah, I'm sure that's what the Joker and Batman have been doing all this time is, you know, having I know what you mean. Yeah,
it's weird. It's weird. I agree with you.
Poorly written.
I should have said something or spoke up more that night we were watching, because when I heard that too, I was like, what? I was like, it felt like very out of place. I think you might be onto something, though, Joe, with the injustice thing, the more I think about it, because you're right. If you know, Bruce is congratulating Clark and he killed a pregnant Lois and years on. And again, the more I think about it, the more I realize that maybe this version of Batman would talk this way and act this way, because think of how 20 years of Gotham kind of messed him up. Think about like a few years in Apocalypse world, and like that's why he's so okay just using assault rifles and stuff. He's like, you know what, guys, I'm so done. Like, anybody who's not on my team is gonna get a bullet in the face. I'm not gonna be like, oh, my parents died, I need to. He's like, nope, everybody, if you get in my way, I'm gonna shoot you. So I was like, okay, it was just.
I mean, there's a line that's crossed eventually where those things are necessary, right?
Sure, yeah, and in this circumstance, they're obviously trying to get to a point where they could send flashback, and I loved that. Even Bruce calls out, he's like, you know, Barry came to me a while ago. I'm pretty sure it was Barry, and he said that Lois was the key. And they're like, oh, you know, we saved the day because Lois showed up and saved Superman. He's like, I don't think that's it. And I was like, thank goodness. Like, Bruce Wayne, like, one of his only things, you know, he's supposed to be a regular human. He's like an apex human, like the best human. But he's a smart guy. Like, he would think that. Mm-hmm. He'd be like, yeah, I don't know if this was it. Like, he'd be like, why did Barry come back? He's got like a mech suit on and stuff. He'd be like, why would he come back and say that Lois is the key? So it really, you know, opens it up for that sequel. And, you know, after watching this, it felt very much like an MCU type thing where right away all I wanted was to see where they're going to take this. Because I'm like, oh, cool. I was like, there's a lot of possibility here. More so in the present day stuff. And that comes in the form, a lot of it for me, of like Martian Manhunter. Martian Manhunter's here. And I was like, holy goodness. Like when there's this scene, this cut scene where it's Martha talking to Lois, and she goes outside of this apartment, Martha does, and her eyes glow red and she turns into Martian Manhunter. And I was like, Are you kidding me? This is really cool because a lot of people have been speculating for a long time that this General Steinbeck or whoever it was from Man of Steel might be John Jones, something like that, a Martian Manhunter. Yeah. And looking back at that, because I just watched it recently, I was like, maybe he's that, or maybe he just impersonates him later on the line, because you would think Clark would have said something. Maybe that was the intent all along, is that he scans everybody and he recognizes that one of the humans is actually an alien, and he's like, when do they meet in the original one, though? Or they meet Batman versus Superman? No, they meet Man of Steel. They go way back. Okay. They're hanging out together, and he goes. It's when Superman, they put the handcuffs on him, and he walks in, and he's like, he breaks the handcuffs, and he looks through the one-way mirror, and he's like telling everybody, he's like, I see everybody in this room. He's like, you know, he's like, you're afraid of me because you can't control me, and he's like, and you can't. And I was like, oh, but he says to him at the end of that movie, he destroys a drone. And, you know, he shows up and he's like, well, I guess you're just going to have to trust me, or I'm just going to have to trust you. So I'm always like, oh, maybe that's a hint. Maybe he sees that he's another alien in disguise and he's like, maybe this is an ally. Or maybe he impersonated him. Martian Manhunter did, you know, a few years later. Who's to know? I'm just glad he's
Martian there. Martian Manhunter impersonated a dead person.
Did he? Maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know.
Maybe it's in the show or something. TV show?
Yeah, the whole control thing. You're afraid of me because you can't control me, and you can't. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, great. Yeah, you're protecting us now, but I mean, yeah, something bad happens and you turn on humanity, it's all over. I mean, and we see the effects of that when, you know, the only thing he loves dies.
Yep.
right?
We love it. I want Injustice so bad, man. I get it. I understand that it's hard to do. But like I said, though, I was happy to see Martian Manhunter because for a long time it said Unite the Seven. They were saying Unite the Seven or like for Aquaman, it was like Unite the Seven Seas. We're not sure. That could have been the seventh member. And I was like, oh, and he's at the end. He does like an MCU style, like he's like, hey, Bruce Wayne, I'm the Martian Manhunter and we can be pals. See you later. And he like kind of takes off. Like,
I mean, that exactly another cliffhanger. I mean, I'm not going to delve into every one. You need to watch it for yourself. But I mean, there are so many open pathways that they leave at the end of the movie for future endeavors in the theater, which is freaking great.
Yep.
And I would have been fine if they would have just delayed Justice League when the Zack Snyder tragedy happened.
Mm-hmm.
I think they should have just delayed it and just, all right, we'll march on with Aquaman and we'll march on with Wonder Woman 84. And afterward, we'll have an even stronger foundation for Justice League. It'll be perfect. We just need to be patient for that money.
Yeah.
That they didn't make because they were not patient.
Yeah, I'm not sure how much. I'd have to calculate it all, but I wonder if there's like this fear that like the superhero bubble is going to pop. You know, even though the superhero movies are more, they're not even like a genre, they're like a framing piece and that you can make almost any genre fit into. But True. I think there was that kind of like, hey, Endgame, like Marvel's coming, Marvel's got Infinity War and Endgame coming up. You better get your Justice League out because anything after that might be like it's hard to live up to that hype, right? But they should be different. They should be set. They are different
That's
properties,
the
right?
Make
like they're both good,
and it will stand on its own two legs.
So I just don't know because right now they're saying like I think Zach said that he had no plans or has no plans on making a follow-up to this, which saddens me because I think there's a lot of potential here. But I understand that he's, he made Man of Steel, he did Batman vs Superman, Dawn of Justice, he did this now, he's done Watchmen, he's done a lot of superhero stuff, and I could see where now if you let out a version that wasn't a full cut of his, that would probably be 3 hours plus no matter what, people would be like, I'm just going to wait for that version, because if you release that one into theaters, people would be like, this isn't his full true vision, I'm going to wait for that one. You know what I mean? Like, but like you said, they're not going to do a 4-hour movie with an intermission at like the middle. Like people don't want that anymore. Yeah. They just want 2.5 hours and done.
Is he very knowledgeable on the whole DC universe? Like,
I think so. I think he's pretty well versed, and I think he had a plan moving forward. Clearly, he did, and he kind of gave characters arcs. Everybody.
Yeah, could he have been the Kevin Feige for Warner Brothers?
I don't know. Like, and that's the other thing too is I don't. You're talking about the apocalypse and stuff. You don't want to rush that, like you said. So I don't know how many. If he wanted to do only 3 or 4, and he was like, this will be the DC stuff, and this is going to be all of it. It's going to be in 4 or 5 movies. And Warner Brothers was like, no, we're going to do way more than this, because obviously they want to, and they want to flesh out their other characters, and to however you want to see it. I'm glad these other movies exist. I'm glad Aquaman and Shazam and Wonder Woman 84 exist. But I could see where if this one had come out the way that he wanted it, those movies have been very different. Had this one been very successful, like if Justice League came out super successful, probably changed.
Most certainly Wonder Woman 84, just because it doesn't quite fit. It establishes some things that aren't shown in these movies at all. Not to mention, it established things that weren't shown off in the theatrical version, which came before it either, which is disappointing.
Yeah.
Wonder Woman 84, it's not a bad movie. We've talked about it on the podcast, but ultimately I could do without it. And I'm sorry to say that because I love Wonder Woman. Yeah. I really like Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman.
Gal Gadot.
I think Patty Jenkins is great. I just think that 84 is unnecessary. It's kind of blah.
Yeah, it's the problem. Like, I used to think prequels were hard to do, like the hardest to do, but I think in-betweequels are the hardest to do because now you have to, you can't do too much to change the status quo because you have, like, future films, especially this one that had something that happened in the future, and they're like, we have to jump back to the past, but don't write any dialogue in the future movies that would offset this. It's weird, but I will say this. Gal Gadot hanging out with Alfred, or I should say Wonder Woman, Diana hanging out with Alfred, great stuff. More Alfred scenes. Alfred got a lot more play in this movie, and Jeremy Irons, he did a great job. He was, like, having a good time. He had little tech stuff going on. He was talking about tea. It's wonderful. I was like, Jeremy Irons, like, it's like, oh, good. They're actually using this amazing actor as opposed to him just kind of saying a few lines here and there. I was like, good on you. Good on you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
but
know,
I'm
a sequence
curious.
that was maybe slightly unnecessary was when they all get together and they take the Nightcrawler or whatever. They're in
Yeah,
the ducks underneath the harbor or
yeah, the
whatever
tunnel thing or whatever. Yeah,
to rescue the people that the parademons are taking away to interrogate. That whole thing was kind of, to be honest, yeah, I don't know, necessary or no, not really, not quite.
no, it's just kind of
It,
a moment to get Aquaman to join the team. You know,
exactly. Yeah,
right?
come on back, Aquaman, save us from the rushing water.
Yeah,
I don't
there.
know. The
Yeah,
Nightcrawler thing. Explain to me how that thing climbs the walls.
it smashes through because they're so hard. It just smashes through, which
Yes,
won't
yes,
hit the water.
physics.
I don't know, man. You love Superman the most. Is this really what you're gonna get me on? Is the Nightcrawler? You're like, mechanically, this doesn't work. This
Yeah,
man can
because
fly. He can fly.
I know it's
With his
ridiculous, but
muscles. He's like, fly.
it's like put legs on your car and it's gonna climb a wall. I don't like it. I think it's
I know you don't like
hokey.
it. I
I
just
like it.
I want the Flying Fox to look sleeker, not like SR. Maybe that. Oh, Joe, maybe this is why they didn't do this. They didn't make it sleek like the SR-71 from X-Men because they didn't want people getting it confused. And it's the first time I've seen Batman have like a big, like like a troop carrier. Maybe he's had it in other things, but I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I guess.
I was fine with it. I know Drew kind of mentioned, our buddy Drew who watched it with us. He was like, he's got to get the Batmobile and his toys around. It's a toy hauler and also carries the team. So it had to be big enough to transport those things, supplies, weaponry, and other vehicles. So I kind of get it. It had a belly it's like a transport plane.
It's like a C-130 with mixed with a Chinook. That's what I'm gonna say. All I know is that usually in the past he usually has the Batwing. Bring the Batwing. These other people don't need your help. They can all get there on their own. Like he uses the Batwing.
He had that in
oh.
Dawn of Justice, right?
Yeah, he does. It does a little clip. It does a little clip up, or Alfred hits him with and it like throws him up, and he jumps through the window into the building. It's great. It's got a weird shape to it. It would break in a second if it hit anything, as most planes probably would. But I wanted to see. I was like, get the Batwing in there. You know how he's not going to get you as easily on the ground is if you're in the air. You know, those parademons, they're going to be like flying around. They'll be like, I don't know what to do with this. You won't have to do the whole like slide under the silo thing. You just fly around. You're super fast. You're faster than you would be in the Batmobile.
Yeah.
Come on, Bruce. Bruce, bring your Batwing, dude. You're killing me.
I think we'll get to wrapping things up in a minute as far as like final take, final notes. Mm-hmm. But I would like to maybe take a second to speak to how we got here.
Oh.
How did we get this? How did this Snyder cut come to be? We got spoiled with such a gem.
The way you said that did not sound sincere, but I think you meant it to.
I meant it.
That's so good, buddy.
So a lot of this was due to public impact.
Yeah, nuts.
There were public communities and social media and fundraisers that literally pushed the point of release the Snyder Cut. Mm-hmm. Just an example. So the community pulled together funds, right, through donations, hundreds of thousands of dollars. $150,000 was donated to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention in honor of Snyder's late daughter.
That's great.
They also raised money to hire a plane to tow a banner above San Diego Comic-Con. Like, come on.
Amazing.
But then there were also some maybe not so great impacts, but still impactful nonetheless. Apparently, I was reading some article I got pulled up here. Apparently, the hashtag release a Snyder Cut, which I've seen quite a bit just on random DC pages that I follow, fan pages and things like that. I've seen that a lot, but it got a little bit of a bad reputation because they inundated, or that campaign. The campaign, it bordered on harassment. They drove the former president of DC Entertainment off Twitter because he was inundated with it so much. She said something.
That's crazy.
Yeah, she said something on social that was kind of a knock against Snyder. I say Schneider because it's Snyder. But anyway, yeah. So apparently they just beat the crap out of her on social
Dang.
media.
What's our website here? Where are we getting this from, by the way?
Yeah, it is Sci-Fi Wire.
Okay, cool.
So credit to them. It's actually a really nice article. I think all this was written post the release of the Snyder Cut. But
It's fascinating how this worked. Like you say, you're talking about all this stuff, this swelling of support for this thing that kind of existed, but then got made. And then you see things like that for a long time, the opposite, where people they were starting these sites to like do a remake of The Last Jedi, and there was like a lot of people trying to like just giving fake money to these people because these people just wanted like it was like some sort of like 150 million or something, like we will remake it ourselves, but like that didn't actually go anywhere, whereas this did. Like it was just enough people and it blew up enough and got made, which is crazy.
So okay, I love that you say it that way, because they do kind of say in this article, it's they say that technically the social campaign got the Snyder Cut made.
Yeah.
They said not released, because anything that costs $70 million to complete isn't really something that originally existed in the first place.
Yeah.
So apparently they shelled out quite a budget to complete it, and I think money well spent. I think if there's a big enough and good enough response to this on HBO Max, maybe Warner Brothers will realize that there's something there and they need to recapture that essence in some fashion and continue on with what they had. If this gets a good enough response, granted it's not like it's made $1 billion box office, it's a much different view here. But they can tell numbers and things and how many times streamed and all that good stuff. And then also critic reviews, although they say it's the same movie just with some things stuffed in. I think anybody who, we've spent an hour talking about this, and I think we've covered plenty of detail, a lot of detail.
Mostly all detail.
Different. Well, yeah, I mean, there's enough detail change between these two that we can spend an hour talking about it.
Yeah,
it is vastly different, in my opinion, and a lot of things that were necessary. I think you're pretty blunt and stupid if you say it's basically the same movie, just with the. Yeah, he's coming to reshape the earth and take it over and all that. Same kind of plot, a little bit, kind of, but there's more to it. It's better explained in this next one. And if you're as naive or I guess blunt's the right term to say it's the same, shame on you. Then you're not much of a critic, are you?
Oh, I was gonna just say, yeah, it's pretty much the same. No, you're right, dude. It's just more of like it's same kind of story beats, but way more fleshed out. So I think if you appreciate the detail stuff like we do, it feels like a vastly different film. But I think the end result is still the same. It's just a cooler way to get there. Like the ride is better. It's a more interesting ride, even though, granted, it's a very long ride. It's a super long ride. It's like
there's a good one. How would you equate it in park rides? This would be compared to Winnie the Pooh versus Space Mountain.
It's Pirates of the Caribbean versus Pirates of the Caribbean. This is just the one in Disneyland that's like 15 minutes long, and you're like, well, this is a lot more in here. You're like, there's a lot more stuff. This is pretty good.
A lot of people won't understand that, but yeah.
Hey, the ones who do, they're the ones I love the most. No, yeah, Winnie the Pooh versus Space Mountain, Jiminy Christmas. No, you can't compare them. Those are different.
Okay, Winnie the Pooh and Peter Pan combined, like riding them back to back for Space Mountain.
Dude,
and Rock and Roller Coaster.
Oh my gosh, those are two. Can that be a thing one day? Can we just have like temporal, like you finish like Big Thunder Mountain and you're just on Splash Mountain? You're like, how did I get here? And you're like, oh, it's all right.
And let's put it this way as well. The moment Superman puts on the black suit, that moment is kind of equal to the moment where you get dropped backwards on Expedition Everest.
Really?
I got goosebumps when that happened, bro. During the movie, I got goosebumps when he put on the black suit.
I was excited for you because I was like, "Oh, this is the moment for Joe." I was like,
"Yeah." I was leaning forward in my seat doing this, and I was getting teary-eyed.
I was just angry about the fact that I was like, Batman, really, you gotta bring that mech suit. I know it makes you a little chunkier, but you're fighting some bad stuff. I wish he would have brought that out. And like, I know he had it destroyed.
They show it hanging on a rack.
Yeah, like maybe it was messed up. He didn't have time to make another one. But I was just thinking, like, dude, it would have been so cool if he would have just come out and been like, he's like, all right, he's like, I kind of suited up. His armor looked good though. It looked great. I mean, it always does.
So Jimmy.
Yeah,
we've kind of touched on it in quite a few aspects, maybe for different characters, but we get quite a few flashbacks here.
Yeah, lots of
flashbacks. How do we feel about them?
It's a lot of cyborg flashbacks for the most part.
That one's probably maybe the most
meaningful.
Right. But, well, I don't even know that I would say that. I think that one's just the
fleshing out.
It's worthwhile, but maybe slightly boring if you already know.
Sure. I'm kind of surprised they didn't give like, because she had her own movie, but like Wonder Woman, they didn't really do anything with that. You know, and I was like, okay, that's fine. They didn't need to. I just want more. I always want more Gal Gadot. I'm sorry, guys.
Because they know we've already gotten them. Even at the time, maybe we have.
She is mesmerizing to me. Like when she's on screen, I'm just like, like I don't. All right, I'm like,
said every man ever. Okay,
just kill them all. No, I thought the flashbacks were good. It's funny that you kind of bring that up because after I just watched Watchmen. There's like that movie is crazy and it's long and there's a ton of flashbacks, but it's still coherent. So I think anybody who's able to do flashbacks and still make it like easy to follow, that's pretty impressive, even if it doesn't always pay off the way you might want it to. So yeah, there's a lot of that stuff and a lot of asides. I think the thing with Aquaman stuff, that felt the most out of nowhere. I like having Willem Dafoe in it. I really do. It just felt kind of like like everybody had their own little side quest and he was just kind of like, I'm not coming back to Atlantis. And it's like, but you got to. We need you. And it was like, oh, okay. We'll come back there one day. But yeah, no, I didn't mind the flashbacks. Like we said, a lot of those kind of fleshing out other characters and adding to some things that we didn't have before. So yeah, I'm all about that. But again, you have to be really interested and curious about these characters to appreciate that at all. Otherwise, you're going to be like, yep, I don't really care if, Cyborg played football, whatever. You're like, I don't know what to tell you.
I think the flashback that deserves the most attention right now is, well, I don't know what I'm saying. Just I think one that we should maybe discuss a little bit is the flashback to Darkseid's siege of Earth.
Yeah, you said you want to save Darkseid till the very end, so this is a good time to do it.
I think this is the time we lean into it. Yeah,
sure.
We segue from the flashback part into what we thought of Darkseid's involvement, and was it appropriate to bring him into this movie as much as they did, or even at all? The flashback to his attempted siege of Earth, I loved it. I freaking loved it. I thought it was pretty grandiose. It was a feast for the eyes, as a young Joe Lever would once say. Mm-hmm. I really liked everything about it. There was quite a bit of CG going on, but it was attractive. It really. I like him. They did a good job with him. Yeah. He is probably Thanos and then some. I think he's more... Granted, I mean, I hate drawing the comparison to Marvel, but I mean, you get the same appearance from Darkseid. He's kind of similar in a lot of aspects. But I really, the voice, the glowing eyes, the kind of light armor, the physicality of him, it's all pretty cool. And when he, smashes the ground and you see the printed insignia of the death or the life equation or whatever.
He finds the Omega, or he puts, like, he does that, and then sometimes it's like the Omega symbol, sometimes it's not. But then again, how did he miss it the first time? I don't understand.
Weird. He was getting his ass beat a little bit. It was done a little weird, like the old gods, like Greek gods, like Zeus and Ares. Like apparently they're the one. They were kind of delivering the worst blows to him. I think Ares gets him in the shoulder with the axe, and he's kind of like bleeding out, and they pull him back into his ship and retreat and that sort of thing. But it was them kind of illustrating in a much more grand way how they kept him from taking over the planet of Earth the first time via teamwork or bringing together the world at that time, or a community to stand strong against an invader that would end them all. So it was really cool. It was it's not the Battle of Helm's Deep, but I think you start to get that vibe a little bit. Against all odds, they take out and send the big bad packing and retreating. I like the show off of all the different players. Like I like the whole Green Lantern. I forget that one's name. They talk about him, but I saw some article that mentioned his name, like he's in this film. I'm like, yeah, sure, I don't know who he is, but gets his hand cut off, and the ring like goes up in front of Darkseid, and I think he goes to reach for it, and it disappears, and then doesn't he get hit? I think that distraction at that moment did something. I can't recall. This is why I need to watch it again. But I like them showing that off. I like the old gods being involved. Obviously, then you have men and the Amazons and the Atlanteans. I think it was much cooler than the Whedon version from theaters. Darkseid in general. That was great. Anything you'd like to add to at least that flashback and what you thought of it and Darkseid?
I didn't want to cut you off because I wanted you to keep going. Joe, I don't like to use the term objectively very often because I don't think it really makes a lot of sense. It's all subjective, really, just the lens in which we view things. However, I would say that this, as far as crazy as subjectivity goes, is just so much better than the first one we got. Now, the first one was okay. Steppenwolf showing up and fighting and all that stuff. It's fine. This just added on to it. Joe, you hit the major things. Something about just watching Ares bury an axe into Darkseid was something I never thought I'd see. And I was like, that was pretty great. I was like, wait a sec. People are getting good hits on freaking Darkseid here. So it was pretty cool to see that stuff because you're like, whoa, okay. Darkseid was not prepared for this crazy group of people. Them all coming together, which, they had a common enemy, which is really nice to see. But yeah, I really liked that sequence. I thought it was way better. And the Green Lantern losing his hand, I was like, oh, way better than him just dying. Like, I was like, oh, that's so rough.
It was meaningful. It's like his hand with the ring, the one, was his...
Yeah, he got some hits on Darkseid too, and I think Darkseid was kind of hitting. And there was a few times they do mention the lanterns, and there's something about that when you use a term like the lanterns or the Amazons or the Atlanteans, where you're like, you just use that term, and there's like there's no Kryptonian on this planet, we should be fine. Like there's stuff like that that kind of builds it up in your mind. You're like, oh, the lanterns must be kind of a big deal if they say that the planet doesn't have lanterns to protect it. You're like, what? Oh, okay. So
aren't they like protectors of the universe or something of that nature?
Yeah, they're kind of like a cool space force, as it were. But yeah,
and there are different colors.
There are different colors, which that's probably why Green was not going to go to Darkseid, even though there's probably a comic where he's wielded it. That's usually willpower. Darkseid would probably be a yellow lantern, which is fear. Or maybe red if he was going rage like your boy Atrocitus. Which would have been sick to see him.
That would have been my color.
But yeah, I liked that scene. I thought it was amped up. That is like a little bit what we're talking about here. All the action sequences are like that in this movie. It's like, oh, did you like it in the first one? Well, it's more of it and it's bloodier. It's like, okay. Yeah. I'm like, I am on board for this, like, because we like to see that, a little bit. We're sadistic.
Yeah. Which, oh gosh, I just thought of the thing I was going to talk about. Crap. What was it?
You know what they were missing in that fight, though, Joe? They were missing the lady who, like, she's the sister to the queen of Themyscira, like,
the general. I forget her name.
Yes, she's so. Yeah. I love her so much, and every time she shows up in any of those Wonder Woman movies, I'm like, she's my favorite. But Gal, if you're watching this, you're my favorite. Don't worry about it. Sorry.
Yeah. I just thought of the point I wanted to bring up. Did you notice how they didn't even bring up the parademons can smell the fear, or the whole fear smell?
Yeah, they didn't do that. Which
they didn't do it.
I'm glad they
Bruce did hanging some criminal over the ledge of a building, like, I'm going to kill you. I don't even think I'm not even going to put you in jail. I just want your fear or something like that. They can smell it, so he can capture one of the parademons or something.
And the parademon explodes into 3 boxes or it shows 3 boxes on the wall, and he's like, that's got to be it. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that because, and again, I don't blame Joss Whedon for making the decisions he made. He probably came in late, and they had to just make it work with what they had, and he's like, well, this isn't going to make sense. I have to do some sort of setup. But in a 4-hour cut where you get more time and more money, yeah, they're going to be able to flesh that out, and they're going to cut stuff where it's like, oh, the parademons are actually the ones who kind of defeated Steppenwolf. It's like, no, the Justice League did. They chopped his head off after skewering him. It's like, what?
Yeah, with Steppenwolf, such a cool name. Like that's I mean that's
cool.
that's like right hand of the devil kind of a thing, like.
Yeah, and he wanted to
cool.
redeem himself. He was gonna have to conquer like another 50 or 100,000 planets to get back on Darkseid's good graces, but he had tried to overtake him before. So there's more there with Desaad, and there's is it Granny Goodness or whoever that lady was hanging out with them.
Yeah, they tease all these characters.
Yeah, you're like,
great, yeah.
The problem is, why is Darkseid just chilling out on the other side of that boom tube during that ending sequence? He should have just ran right through those little laser beams, which we did get in a... was that like an alternate future or something where it showed him just killing everybody? I was
Next to Superman, they were fighting and killing people. Yeah, yes. It was an alternate.
I just love seeing those crazy Omega beams, man, just going I was like,
yeah,
oh, so cool.
And it's a brief moment, blink and you miss it, but you do get it. I love that brooding Darkseid. They show him on his throne with the flames and the, just kind of that Thanos moment of I'll get him. As simpleton as that sounded, it's cool. I mean, I'm looking at a still image from the film right now of him sitting on his throne doing that. Imposing, really cool.
Yeah. Well, and Thanos also is way, I think, more dynamic because he's had more time. Darkseid's not supposed to be... I don't think you're supposed to sympathize with Darkseid. I don't think you're supposed to understand what he's doing. You're he's just evil incarnate.
Embodiment of evil.
Yeah, he's not supposed to be he's doing this for the good of everybody. You're he's just a really, really bad guy.
Nope. Yeah, he's a conqueror through and through, period.
You're not going to talk to him. You're not going to have these little, it's not going to be Doctor Strange and Thanos talking about, why are you doing this? It's going to be we're killing. Quick shout out though to Mira, who is kind of weird. She's got an interesting accent in this film, but she starts blood bending or pulling the blood out of Steppenwolf at that one moment.
Why is that not a thing in Aquaman?
Do it all the time. Do it all the time. If you want to take out King Orm or whatever, just go up to him, just clear the space of water, and just there's your problem solved.
Super cool.
Oh my gosh. Cool. So man, I like that kind of stuff. It was what?
So I think we can agree we like how much we got of Darkseid, considering he hasn't had a lot of time to develop. This was kind of his time to develop, right?
To shine,
I think it was a good developmental movie for him, and in the future we'll get him in a more Thanos-esque featurette, right?
Hope so.
One would hope, for crying out loud, Warner Bros. Anywho, stepping back real quick to something that's more of a icing on the cake type of item. Mm-hmm. Music.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up too. I'm glad you brought that
up. Heck?
It changed a lot. So
what happened to Icky Thump where he's walking down the pier and jumping into the water? Instead, it's okay,
there was an original score and composer that went along with this movie. Forgive me, I don't recall. But that all got swapped out when Zach left, and they brought in Danny Elfman. And Danny Elfman did a bunch of stuff. Now, Zach is also known for doing stuff like putting a really popular song in his movies. So the Icky Thump thing, I wasn't sure if that was coming or going. But there was a lot of stuff that they got rid of. They even changed the beginning portion or some of Wonder Woman's theme, and I've grown to absolutely adore that music. So thankfully they still had some of that on the back end of the...
Yeah, they still did the main theme songs for characters, and Wonder Woman you gotta have in there. And it's awesome.
Also the Man of Steel, the freaking Hans Zimmer, the bum bum, and then they play just a few notes, and you're like, Superman. You're like, here we go, baby. Which by the way, you did not like Cyborg's the image they made of Superman, because they were talking about resurrecting. They're like, I'm not gonna say it.
I'm not gonna say it. And he just projects it. I'm like, lame.
Like that. I like that moment when they show Bruce with like the red cape of like that, and then later on when you see Superman show up to talk to Alfred, they show both of those things in the trailer, and they aren't there. You know? And it's like,
and here you get it, and you're like, yes, I know what happened.
Yeah. So the music changed a lot.
I'm running a little low on battery.
I was going to ask you, how much time do you have?
I got less than 30 minutes, so 25-ish.
Perfect. We can
pushing it.
We'll start. That's okay. We should probably start wrapping it up then. But the music did change. I'll probably quickly look up and see who did that. But yeah, so they brought that original score back in for that, which I don't know. It's fine.
Most of it was fine. Like I don't mind orchestral kind of build up music that's a little bit more artistic. But there were a couple in here that were just like jarring. Like they did not fit what was happening on the screen at all. And the Aquaman moments were kind of the big ones for me. I remember when he's in that ice village in Norway or wherever it is, Scandinavian. It looked like he was walking down that pier. I mean, I expected something a little more dramatic and like driving, and instead it was very like sad and somber. Like he was sitting in a meadow looking at a butterfly die. You know, I'm like, what the hell? So there were just a couple times like that. I think there was another one that I can't recall, but it's something to pay attention to as you're watching. You know, so you get some good and you get some bad as far as like the music and sound goes over some of this stuff. So worth pointing out.
It was Junkie XL, by the way. But you make a good point. I don't know why Hans wasn't more involved, because I would have just I would have been like, all right, like just there must have been a purpose for that, or maybe a change up for it. But yeah, I love what he did. Like I said, with the Man of Steel score. I wouldn't want you to change that at all. Like, and I'm pretty sure that's in this one. But you just hear it and you're like, my eyes roll back in my head and I'm like, this is great. But yeah, you're right. The music was definitely different. But for some reason, I just can't get those ladies singing out of my head, out of that village.
Yeah,
I think it's because it went on so long. I was so surprised. I was like, what's happening? I was like, this would have been the first thing. I'm sorry. They sounded great. I'm sure it makes perfect sense if I understood what they're saying. But if they were going to put this in theaters, that would have been one of the first things they just would have cut. They would have been like like Zach, people are going to get frustrated in the beginning of your movie if you're trying to get to the action and you're hanging out and it's like, what? So
these are Aquaman's groupies.
Yeah, exactly.
Singing for him.
Which that whole sequence was still in there, which I was so amazed by, because clearly they, like, a lot of them spoke English, or some of them spoke English, or whatever else, and it's still just Arthur Curry saying like, "Just like a bat," and he's like talking to him like he's just like basically outing Batman to the whole world, and it's like, it's not a big deal, like it's fine. He's the Aquaman. So yeah. Anyway, in closing, I like that this exists. I like that the original exists. I think both have their merits, but I think there's just more to like here, and it just goes on for a long time. So you got to get ready for that. It's 4 hours. Baby.
It's long. It's long, but you're not wasting time, especially if you haven't seen it. I think if you like the DC side of things and you like these characters, you have to watch it. Even if you saw the first Justice League, this is worth watching. Let me also cap it off by saying this. Have I gone back and watched the first Justice League again? Yes, but only a little bit of it. I couldn't make it through the whole thing. Will I go back and watch this again? Yes, most definitely.
As long as you have HBO Max.
That much.
Yeah.
As long as I have HBO Max, I'll go back and watch it. And one day I'll pirate it and watch it again.
No, you won't. You'll purchase the $60 version Blu-ray or whatever it is.
I'm totally kidding, but I will stream it. It's just a matter of finding the time, some late night, whatever. I'm in the mood. I will watch it again. It is. I mean, I'm not going to call it my favorite DC film to date, or will I? I did like Wonder Woman. Either way, this is the meats. Like if this was a sundae or a taco salad, if this was a taco salad, this would be the frickin' beef on that frickin' taco salad, you know?
Yep, true that.
It was something. It was something. I am so glad that it was made and released for us to enjoy. And I hope that it gets a big enough reaction out of everybody in the fandom that Warner Bros. Does something to, reignite that flame that I think is there. There's
Yeah.
there's a lot of potential. We touched a lot on how there's all these characters that we kind of get little moments with, and we're like, wait, who is that? And wait, what are they?
Yeah.
I mean, freaking Desaad, for crying out loud! I can't even tell who or what he is. I mean,
Yeah.
give me more of that guy. Like,
Yeah, for sure.
This is like the trunk of a tree, and all these branches branching out with leaves yet to grow.
Yeah.
And those leaves are movies or stories. I just, come on. Somebody has to see that potential and do something with it. I haven't seen anything too bad. I know there were some critic reviews that were pretty mediocre. Like, yeah, it's the same movie again with a few more things and some pointless moments. Come on. So I encourage people to watch it. I think on a rating scale, I'm not even going to do it. I won't even do it. I mean, to me, from what I've gotten out of DC thus far, it's a high ranking. I can't. It's so complex.
Yeah.
And there are so many variables. I don't know that I can say, yeah, it's a 9.8 on a 10.
Yeah.
It's somewhere in that realm, but it's just, I really appreciate it. And it's just not because I'm fanboying or I'm biased. Maybe I'm a little biased, but it's worthwhile. It's what I wish we would have got in theaters or some form of it. And that sounds stupid because we did get a form of it.
Yeah.
Not really. Yeah. There were a lot of things wrong with that one. And like you say, I'm not crucifying Joss Whedon or anything like that. It's just, I want something better. It just lacked a lot.
Yeah. I would recommend it only if you've watched Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice. Maybe you could watch Batman vs. Superman Dawn of Justice Ultimate Edition and then watch this if you've never watched any of these other ones. I would not recommend jumping straight into this one, though, if you're unfamiliar with DC's offerings. Otherwise, you will be completely lost. It's kind of the same like with Infinity War or something. I would not recommend you do that because there's a moment where a man who looks like a regular man, seemingly, gets stabbed in the back by an alien and turns into a robot man with a cape. So if you're not ready for the Vision to pop out of something like that, this movie also will be kind of like, what's happening? But I know a lot of people watch this show, Joe. A lot of people listen to us and they hear us, and I know this is going to get back to Warner Brothers someday. So Warner Brothers, do me one little favor, okay? Please, whatever you have to do to get Ben Affleck back. I know you do Robert Pattinson. I'm sure it's gonna be great. But you could do multiple and get Joe Manganiello back. He was ready to do Deathstroke. We need Deathstroke. He looks so good. Maybe not even the Mohawk. I need to see him fight Batman. Think of that fight in the warehouse where Batman killed all those guys, but it's with Deathstroke.
I'll reinforce your thoughts, Jimmy, here, or your sentiments, or your speech, whatever you want to call it.
Yes, my monologue.
I'll reinforce that. Yeah, your monologue. I'll reinforce that by saying, because we didn't really touch on it, we might have in the original Justice League podcast, but this movie goes on to reinforce it more because we get more time with certain characters and they're featured in a much better way. And it makes more sense, and they're more identifiable, relatable, likable. The casting for the current universe that we have set up, from Flash to Aquaman to Superman to Batman and Superman especially, and Aquaman in his own right. I mean, I think Jason is a great Aquaman. The casting right now is spot on. If only we could keep it forever, because it is great. It is absolutely great. It's kind of like the Marvel Universe. They have cast everyone so well.
It's pitch perfect. Yeah.
DC got it, and it's slipping through their fingers like wet spaghetti noodles, Yeah.
Like, oh gosh, yeah. Because I want. Is it crazy? And I don't know. I could be wrong about this. I think this is only the third time we've seen Henry Cavill as Superman. Is it the third? Is it fourth?
Third.
Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, Justice League, right? For the most part. Isn't that he's so good. It's just
he is good. I really like Henry Cavill.
He seems like a nice guy. I want more. I just want more Superman, especially in that black suit. He probably wouldn't keep it forever, but it's just cool to see it. I thought there was going to be a moment where Batman just turns and be like, I can see that you like See, like, what I'm wearing? I understand. It's like that moment in Infinity War where Thor sees Captain America. He's like, I see you've grown a beard like mine. You know? Cap's like, yeah. Like,
I see I've made quite the impact.
yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh, yeah, oh, man, it's so good. But yeah,
Black is awfully slimming Superman.
Exactly. It would. I recommend it. So check it out if you haven't already, and let us know what you think about it, because I do want to hear what other people think too. It'd be very interesting to hear all that. Well, Joe, your battery is probably not going to hang on for too much longer, so we're just going to speed through these last two segments, everybody's favorite segments of the show. But let's just start with that thing that we like to
Time Killer.
That's right. It's time for Time Killers. That was beautiful. Well done. It's games we've been playing, movies we've been watching, TV shows we've been viewing. Joe, besides Justice League, which I think we're both still watching currently. It's that long. It's just on in the background. Oh, I could have just had it on in the background. That probably would have been. I probably would have been in some sort of infringement. What have you been killing time with lately, buddy?
Pretty much flat out nothing, Jimmy. Not much of anything. I have intentions on watching Yellowstone.
Oh,
with,
okay. Cool.
Kevin Costner, I believe, is
Kevin.
the
Dude,
main
he's so good.
there, right? Drew, our buddy Drew, says great things. Have you seen it, Jimmy?
I don't think I have.
No. I hear great things, and apparently it's only, I forget, it might be Paramount Network that I need.
Oh, Paramount Plus.
I thought it was Peacock streaming from NBC. I don't know which it is anymore. I'm so confused. But I see ads for it, and I'm like, oh, I want to watch that.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's on my list. But yeah, have I been killing time with much? Not really.
Yeah.
Not really.
Fair enough.
Biggest thing recently was Justice League, and I think we've talked long enough about that one, don't you think?
Who knows? We could keep going, honestly. Yeah, for me, you know, I for some odd reason, I was like, I'll just go on a Zack Snyder kick. So I watched Man of Steel recently. Still great. Really good movie. I think, anyway. I really like that Superman origin. Not a lot I don't like about it, and because we did our 2 versus 1 fights last week, I get to watch that fight with him in Smallville, and I used a lot of that stuff for my Hyperion, which is video about Marvel's version of Superman, which I made a while back. But man, I still like that. Also, you just got to give it to Michael Shannon. General Zod, I think, still for me is my favorite villain that DC's come out with in these films so far. I just really like him. Like on character motivation, it makes sense. He was just raised to be a warrior and the general, like the leader of the military for Krypton, and you could see why someone like that would go insane trying to save Krypton at all costs. It's like, yeah, I get that. He just he leans into it. Love it so much. And then I watched Watchmen the other night. Wow, that's a long movie, like 2 hours, 42 minutes or something like that. That one's, you can see where Zach kind of got into the superhero stuff in a big way there. But yeah, that one's very dark and kind of, you know, it's sexy and stuff like that, very violent and very, really gritty. But yeah, you know, of the two, I think it was cool to go back and watch it, but there's something about Man of Steel that I'll keep going back to that movie. There's something, man, I like it. It's good stuff. I enjoy it. So yeah. Also, side note, talking about superhero stuff, I've jumped back into Marvel's Avengers because they did the next gen update, and believe it or not, it works like butter now. There's one mission that I have loading issues with still, infinite load screens, but everything else works so much better. This is how the game I wish it would have launched. And Black Panther is on the way. Man, I'm excited. So anybody out there who's playing on Xbox One or Series X, you hit me up. We'll team up. It would be great. It's a lot of fun. I've been having fun jumping back in. So yeah, there we go. Time killers. Cool. Time killers. Well, Joe, it's time to move into that segment of the show, my favorite segment, which is community feedback and questions. There we go. I didn't know if he was going to say it or not. I never know.
I like to keep the people guessing.
He keeps us guessing. This one comes in on our Discord from the J-Strom. Hey, J-Strom. He says, can you think of a single Joss Whedon added scene in the theatrical cut that was actually better than the Snyder Cut version of the film? Joe, what do you think? Oh, I have one. If you can't think of one,
go ahead.
For me, I don't know if I want to say it's better, but one that I really appreciated and I thought was funny, and it was kind of a cool character moment, is Aquaman sitting on the Batmobile, who is also nudged up against the lasso of truth. And he speaks his mind finally, which is great because the whole movie he's so stoic.
That was the one joke I was okay with.
I loved it, and I love when he gets finally to Wonder Woman. He's like, you're gorgeous. He's like, I know our people have been fighting for centuries. He's like, I don't really care about any of that. I was just like,
that was a good
it's
moment.
so great. I love that. There's something about that moment that to me, I was like, Aquaman got to share like he never would, because normally he'd be like, he just kind of be like, you know, but now.
And it showed the power of the lasso, right?
Yeah,
it
exactly.
Showed it off a little bit, which was great.
And all of them are kind of watching it, and they're kind of like, just let him finish.
Yeah, so it's the one part I miss. I know our buddy Drew disagrees, but I thought it was fine. It's not like it's like degrading Aquaman in any way. It's just, you know,
it's just for fun. Yeah, that's the one.
That's my pick too. I can't top that.
That's a good pick. Anyway,
otherwise I don't think there are any.
Oh my gosh!
Except for some music.
I like at the very end Superman and Flash racing. That's kind of fun. There's like a point there at the end. He's like, "Which coast do you want to go to?" He's like, "I've never seen the Pacific." And he like looks over there, and Superman's like, "What you mean that way?" He also jokes earlier on. Superman says like, "If you lose, you're off the team." And Barry's like, "What?" And he's like, I'm just kidding. It's like, oh, I like that kind of stuff. Anyway, thank you everybody for watching today. If you did indeed make it to the end of this show, all you need to do is tweet the hashtag at us, #CriticalPodcast, and let us know on Twitter, which we are at GoCritical, or you can tweet at me personally. I'm at JimmyGood013. However, if you'd like to tweet at Joe about something Snyder Cut related or something else, Joe, where can they find you?
You'll have to find me at Joe something. It's gonna pop up on screen. I'm pretty sure it's Joe_Lever or something weird.
Joe Lever _627. It's fine. Okay. I can just start doing this. But if you did make it to the end, then just hashtag Snyder Cut. Everybody's tweeting that out recently. Big shout outs not only to Ryan, but also to Jalen, who hung out to the very end of the last episode, or one of the more recent episodes. If you do make it to the very end, let me know in the comments. I'll shout you out. I'll be like, hey, thanks so much for listening all the way through. We'll see if you do it twice.
That means that they can tolerate Joe's rambling.
Jalen said he loves you, Joe. He said he loves you.
Why, thank you.
He said he loves you, but he didn't say that if he loved me or not. So I don't know.
All right, Jimmy, looks like I'm in. You're out, pal.
That's right. Hey, Joe, you just take over. I'm just warming up the podcast for a couple of years here. You know, you've been here most of them, so you know what you're doing. You don't even need me. We'll just get friggin' Jason Momoa to be your co-host. Wouldn't that be great?
Oh yeah!
He still had those moments.
Kool-Aid Man.
He still had some moments.
He had that a little bit, but he was a lot less of a bro surfer dude, which I appreciate.
They got rid of some of the woos, but they were still in there. He was still bro Aquaman, or whatever the joke I made was when I originally reviewed Justice League. I don't remember. Aquabronus round. There we go. That's what it was.
Yeah.
I remember it now. Anyway, thank you guys. If you guys want to support the channel, consider checking out our Twitch. You can see me streaming there usually Mondays and Fridays. Got a Spreadshirt. But honestly, just you commenting here. Just leave a comment or just share this. This would be great. Also, huge thanks to our patrons who make all this possible. We appreciate you guys so much. Thank you. Joe, any final words before we wrap up here today?
Final words.
Very good. Thanks everybody for watching, and until next time, which will probably be Godzilla vs. King Kong, just remember to adapt and overcome. Bye-bye. And I swear to goodness, if Godzilla loses, I'm gonna lose my mind. I will lose my mind.
It's a big gorilla. I don't see how he can't lose. Or can.